The potential 2028 Democratic candidates are trying to give their public images a makeover by becoming book salesmen. Check out these recent covers. Gavin Newsom's Young Man in a Hurry. Josh Shapiro's Where We Keep the Light. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear announcing his book earlier today, Go and Do Likewise, How We Heal a Broken Country. And while some are reworking their image, others are working on their waistlines. J.B. Pritzker getting asked by a reporter if he's slimming down for a presidential campaign.
I don't know about other people. I've been challenged with my weight for, most of my life, honestly. And so, the idea, and I have succeeded and failed. I realize that other people want to make this about something that it's not.
I mean, I don't know if this is appropriate to ask, but can I ask about GOP1s? It's been such a conversation nationally. Is that something that you've tried?
I do not think that it's something that people should be, revealing about them. It's like a pretty hyper-personal question. I don't want to answer it because I don't want to make it as if this is okay for people to be asking one another.
I don't know if the problem is waistlines in Illinois. I think it might be the actual government system, like the broken pensions, for example.
Well, I tell you, I love Democrats telling us how to heal a broken country. It's like a domestic abuser teaching first aid to his spouse. It's like, I could write that book for you on one page. Stop calling us Nazis and racists. Just because we're wrong, in your opinion, doesn't make us evil. That's one page. You could put it out there. I'll even pay for it. But you do that and the countries will heal, but then all these race-baiting academics will be out of work. The real weight loss, Dana, is coming from the party. It's shedding men. Because their issues become less and less measurable. There are no solutions that actually create scoring. It's more about feelings and unlimited empathy, which cannot be scored. Men prefer things that you can measure. And why do they, it's like, if you look at Trump, that's funny. It's the first thing we did. Anyway, Dana, do not think about what she just said.
Okay,
I want you pure. DOJ measures. Immigration was about measuring illegals, crime, economy. These are all measures. The only thing the Dems measured was a measurement itself, DEI. It's the only measurement they cared about, but it had nothing to do with profits or nothing to do with outcomes. In a sense, the counting in DEI was the outcome, which meant that it didn't mean anything. Every time you measure an outcome, Democrats come up empty, and which is why any kind of measuring is seen as oppressive. It's racist. Voter ID, it's racist. It's oppressive because it exposes, our corruption.
One thing about all of these covers is that they are trying to be aspirational at the same time that they're dealing with the fact that the brokenness, I don't disagree that there's polarization in the country, but it does feel like within the party, we're about to see a big knockdown drag out in this primary that's coming. Joey.
I look at these covers, like, wonder why Josh Shapiro didn't put himself on the cover. That's the only thing that kind of stands out to me. I mean, I bet that dog's like, I didn't ask for this shit. Like, I didn't want to be on this cover. I wanted to go chase ducks, That's what he was born for. No, part of the segment is to talk about where the Democrats stack up. And it's got to feel bad to be Gavin Newsom and put that much effort into trying to be president one day. I mean, he did a podcast, multiple podcasts. He's going around the world. He's got his hands figured out, his hair. And Kamala Harris is polling double digits better than he is among Democrats. She's the one that just lost. She's the one that just wrote a book complaining about losing. And she's outrunning him. I mean, obviously it's early. We don't know where it will stack up and everyone in the race. But, she's the leading candidate right now. And all this work that Gavin's doing must be for naught.
And Harold, it does feel a little early to be talking about 2028. However, the race really begins the night that the midterms are called. So it's only about 8 months away.
It really is. And unfortunately, these races begin almost right after the president's elected, and he or she will say she one day, but he's sworn in. You go back and you look, I think these books are important for these men and women considering this, because it gives them a chance to talk about on their own terms how they've changed their mind, the things that they think have worked the best in their political lives, and how they might translate that at the national level. You think about the 9 years, 10 years, or now the 10 years since President Trump won the election the first time. there are 2 or 3 people who are some of his, and they're my friends. Lindsey Graham's an old friend. I served with him in Congress. Lindsey was very critical of President Trump in 2016. J.D. Vance was very critical of President Trump, and so was Marco Rubio. I think people need to have opportunity and space to be able to evolve and change, and clearly they have. And they're working with President Trump now, and by accounts, if you would ask them, they're doing really, really positive and important things. I would argue this is just welcome to presidential politics, the way these people are behaving. I do hope that those who are thinking about running this time talk more about the future and less about the past, less about Trump. I think there's some truth to this Trump derangement syndrome stuff, and talk more in a more wholesome and fulsome way about how you're going to prepare us for AI. What are you going to do to help healthcare costs come down? If you believe tariffs aren't working, and I don't say remove them, and say how we're going to make the nation more attractive for people to invest in our country and create more jobs here. That's what I want to hear more. How are you going to make our schools better? Be interesting to hear these governors, and for that matter, the senators thinking about running, how they position themselves on this issue. And stop asking about people's weight. I want to be clear. I think it's completely out of line.
Who do you want as your VP?
I think you have to be completely out of line asking someone about their weight.
If it's you and Fetterman for 2028, which it feels like it will be, who is the VP? Because it's weird, because he's a senator, but you were a congressman, and you're better looking than he is, and you're more eloquent. So
he likes to wear a suit. So
you wear a suit. So is it going to be Ford Fetterman, or is it going to be Fetterman Ford? That sounds like a dealership. Fetterman Ford.
Maybe we should go back to talking about waistlines.
On the auto mile.
Close us out here with your thoughts.
All right. It sort of reminds me of auditions for NFL cheerleading, right? You get in the best shape possible. You get tan. You get your hair done. You get your nails done. You are looking and performing your absolute best. Except this isn't supposed to be an audition. This is reading like brand management, not actual leadership portrayal. I don't care how much weight he loses. I want to see what legislation he has passed, what budget he has balanced, how he has profited his constituents, how everyone lives safely and more healthy under his leadership. Like, this is such a joke to me. I think all of these people have confused the presidency with some type of media role. They are engaged in theatrics, thinking that their brand and their narrative will somehow suffice or replace credibility or experience or governance or legislating or whatever it is. So the flurry of the book writings, and by the way, Newsom's cover is the worst. Like, what is that font? What is that picture? It's hideous. No, why don't you show me a flurry of governance? Show me, hey, guys, I balanced this budget and I did all of this stuff. Like, all they're doing is talking about veneer things. And it's such a sad display. I think it's a mischaracterization. They missed the whole point of what President Trump was. He came to office with media experience and a decades-long harnessing of what production and what communication to the public looked like. But they confused that was his only shtick. And it's not a shtick, right? He is a multidimensional creature that is governing quite well from the White House. So I think they're going to learn the hard way that the presidency is not a media role, and that I think they're wasting their time auditioning instead of governing.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.